everybody. Welcome to a special edition of Wealth Wednesdays. I'm Angela Yee, along with my co-host and friend, Stacey Tisdale.
We're launching a series for female entrepreneurs of color called Sheaconomics in partnership with our friends at Shea Moisture and Fearless Fund. Together, we're going to provide female founders of color with the information, resources, and support they need in order to thrive.
Before we get started, I'd like to say thank you to Angela Yee and Stacey Tisdale for partnering with us to bring you the Sheaconomics series. At Shea Moisture, we believe the truest path to equality is through economic equity. For years, Shea Moisture has invested in and supported Black and women of color-owned businesses, which is why we're so excited to bring this to you today. We hope you enjoy and learn. Thank you.
If we were having a conversation about Black female entrepreneurs a year ago, even a few months ago, our conversation would be largely focused on the fact that they seem invisible, despite the reality that they are the largest group of entrepreneurs in the United States.
Until COVID-19, female entrepreneurs of color were the backbone of the U.S. economy. Despite challenges that included a lack of access to capital, bias in the business world, increased likelihood of late or non-payment from customers, and more caregiving responsibilities than other groups.
From 2014 to 2019, the number of women-owned businesses overall grew by 21%, but firms owned by women of color grew by more than double that rate. We are a diverse tapestry of successful innovators.
Obviously, COVID-19 has devastated the economy, and Black female business founders have been especially hard hit. But no sooner were we dealing with the pandemic than we were rocked by a much older and arguably more destructive force in our lives. The brutal killing of George Floyd reminded all of us of the impact of systemic racism in our communities and our businesses.
But this time seems to be different, and here's how it applies to Black female entrepreneurs. Those indelible images and the mass protests that followed prompted institutions and corporations around the world to respond to the demands for social justice. They did it, and they're still doing it with money. They're pouring billions of dollars into Black-owned businesses. The goal is honorable, to try to repair the damage done by centuries of racist policies and behaviors. But unless this money brings with it a new understanding of the unique needs of female entrepreneurs of color, who they are and what they require to succeed, all that money won't help much.
Female entrepreneurs of color have more issues with credit. They have more pressures as the heads of households and are less likely to be able to back up loans with their personal wealth. We don't even define success in the same way. And unless corporations and investors do their homework and learn about Black businesswomen, this may all add up to a missed opportunity.
Women of color entrepreneurs, particularly Black women entrepreneurs, tend to be overeducated and under-resourced. And what we mean by that is, lots of opportunities are available for women of color entrepreneurs or Black women entrepreneurs to receive training, guidance, mentoring, and the like. But then when it really comes down to the brass tacks and the funding that they need to either launch a venture or to expand or grow a venture for sustainability, that's where the challenge often comes up. So we're now at a point, again, where companies and investors are recognizing their role in this relationship.
And what about entrepreneurs themselves? What do you need to know to take full advantage of this moment? What adjustments do you need to make in your business practices and your own mindsets? Those are some of the questions we'll be delving into.
When companies are coming to you and saying, hey, we want to support you, we want to work with you, how are you pushing them to do longer term contracts? So it's not just like, oh, you're only going to work for me this year. No, if you want to work with me, like, what can we make happen in the next 3 years? Because it's going to take time to see the impact.
Angela, let's get started.
Right now, we are really happy to be joined by one of the country's top thought leaders, experts and advocates for female founders of color, Melissa Bradley. Melissa is founder and managing partner at the Washington, D.C. based business accelerator 1863 Ventures. She's also the founder of Eureka, a tech platform that provides coaching and capital to small businesses. Melissa also teaches at Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business. That's a lot of things, Melissa. I don't know how you have time in the day, but Melissa, thank you for joining us. We now have these big capital inflows for Black female founders, but as we've discussed, money alone is not enough to foster success. So how important is it that investors understand the culture of Black female entrepreneurship?
It's extremely important. I think we're all excited about these big commitments, but there is a concern or I have three concerns. One, that is a mismatch in the type of capital. Two, the timing is potentially too aggressive because we just operate differently. And three, that it's just money, and money is a means to an end. And so research that I did 2 years ago shows that it costs $250,000 more for a Black entrepreneur to start the same exact business as their white peer. So one is that while the money is coming in, it needs to be calibrated to what our needs are and the fact that we have exacerbated costs because of discrimination in lending, because of access to coaching, because of access to technology. So that's the first thing. The second thing is because, again, money is a means to an end. We need coaching and we need support. Now, not a lot because we don't need to be guided, but we don't have a peer group. We have a lot of social capital, but I don't know about you, but I'm just beginning to know lots of Black CEOs. I'm just beginning to know lots of Black millionaires. And so it's important that we have guideposts and touchstones that can help us move the business forward, because that's really what happens, right? The money is an accelerant, but without a North Star and people to give us guidance, it's really not going to be as effective. So while I appreciate the tons of cash, they need to understand that our timing and our focus is very different. The last thing I'll say is I was talking to a fellow COO of a large venture company, and he said, you know what? Black culture is about community. Capitalism is about individualism. We have to reconcile that friction that particularly for Black female entrepreneurs who are managing lots of other things besides their business, that we're allowed to move at our own pace with our own focus and not somebody else's definition of success.
Melissa, while the financial landscape is shifting, people's understanding of what it really means to be a Black or brown entrepreneur and how you do business also has to shift. Can you elaborate on that?
So in terms of the research, we found both indirect and direct costs. So a direct cost, for example, is that African Americans are charged anywhere between 1.5% to 2.5% more on a loan. And that, unfortunately, is legal. And the precipice or the precedent for that is obviously a credit score, right? We as Black people pay our bills, but FICO doesn't recognize how we do that and the cadence we do that. And it's a very old school model in terms of credit scores. So we actually get charged more. We also oftentimes don't get into these big time accelerators because we don't have a team. When I started my first business, my friends were like, somebody better keep a job because you're not going to be able to pay your rent. And so as many solo entrepreneurs, we get locked out of these systems. And what happens when we get locked out of those is we get free mentoring coaching, which in the real world, we probably churn through 4 times at almost double the rate of what it would cost our white peer. The other thing is we don't get access to all these free credits, Facebook credits, Amazon credits. If you're not in a program, you can't access that. Well, that alone can be $100,000 that a Black female entrepreneur is churning through because they have been locked out of a program because the stereotype of a successful entrepreneur is a team.
You've also said that Black female founders are not primarily motivated by money. And I agree with that. I know that is definitely not my primary motivation. That community is often more important than bottom line. So how does that play out in the relationship between the founders and their investors? And what should companies and investors be doing to better understand this group?
Yeah, I would say historically it has not worked out well because, if you have a community focus, you automatically have an orientation to do things differently that may not be focused on expediency, but may be focused on cultural or community fit. It doesn't necessarily cost more, it's just a different pathway. But in an investor's mind, you're taking more money on a monthly or quarterly basis to have this sidetrack focus. I think you're beginning to see more investors moving toward an impact frame. So you have people like Salesforce and City Ventures that while impact typically was environmental and green, they're beginning to also focus on social impact and recognizing that Black female entrepreneurs typically are the primary wealth creators and generators in their households and their communities. And that means jobs. That means stability and family. That's an impact. They know that they're probably delivering products or services that are currently not in the market or not meeting the needs of the consumer. That's an impact. So slowly but surely, you're beginning to see this shift, but it's still not keeping pace with us, but it's better than nothing.
Melissa, we've touched on this in earlier conversations, and as a longtime reporter who's covered Black female entrepreneurs, I am always amazed by the lack of research and data about them. There aren't statistics about their challenges, their needs, their journeys. How big a factor is that in these attempts to level the playing field, and how are companies going to serve them if, like what you're touching on, community being more important to us, there's not research out there to show them that.
Research proves that we actually exist, which is a sad state of affairs because clearly we are here loud and proud. But I think now we need to go beyond just our presence, but really what drives us, what motivates us, what makes us successful. We have a few case studies, but we certainly could stand more of how our pathway is different than our white peers. And I think particularly where we really ultimately I would love to see us get to is the nuance between those who are running tech companies and those who are running product and service companies. There has been an overweighting on all this money coming in on venture. When less than 20% of Black businesses are tech companies, that's a lot of money for a small amount of businesses that, let me be clear, I want to see grow. But I got brothers and sisters who do eyelashes. I got sisters who got healthcare products. They got hair care products. They got beauty products. Where's those dollars? Because if they take venture capital, my fear is that 2 rounds in, they're going to lose control of their company. They're going to be immediately diluted.
Melissa, you said something to me that also really resonated. I want to shift a little bit to the entrepreneur's personal experience. You said it's like female founders of color have been invited to game night, but nobody told us the rules of the game. Can you elaborate on that?
What I'm getting is a lot of people saying, look, we're here to help you, come. But then you get there and it's like, well, wait a minute, it's like the door still has a code and you didn't give me the code because that's how you actually access capital. It's great that you interviewed me, but if I don't make it to the investment committee, what good is that? I get a coach, you want me to talk to you, but you're speaking a different language because you're not understanding my business. You're talking all this tech speak and I'm trying to sell a beauty product. So I think the doors are opening, but the path is still not paved to be the most supportive it can be for our businesses. And that's a real opportunity, I would say, for investors and corporate partners to actually exert competitive advantage and act like you actually give a damn about us. And more importantly, that you understand us because your journey is not my journey. And more importantly, my journey is not Angela's and vice versa. So the last thing is you have to stop treating us as if we're a monolithic group of people who all need the exact same thing, because that just undermines the power that we have within our community.
Now, I just want to shift gears in this conversation and talk about this, right? What are some things we should consider when it comes to pivoting our businesses for the new economy?
So I think the new economy, and certainly post-COVID, I think first thing is really understanding your customers. I'm always concerned when entrepreneurs can give me the demographics, but not the psychographics and the purchasing power. So first thing is spend some time with your customers. Don't tell me they're 18 to 25-year-old Black women living in the South. You need to tell me what they buy, how they buy, what are the sites they use. So pick up the phone and call them or use some kind of tool and know your customers. The second thing is really understand what is the friction of them getting your product and develop systems there. Don't just pivot to some online platform. Make sure it's one that's going to meet their needs and deliver it on time and deliver it the way they want and accept your packaging. And then the third thing I would say is really think about, do you want to be $1 million business, a $10 million business, or a $100 million business? Because this is that moment where if you want to be a $100 million business, please get ready because the doors are opening for major retailers that this is your chance.
Last question. What does this conversation look like 1 year from now?
Boy, I'm optimistic on some days and pessimistic on others. I think at least 1 year from now, we're guaranteed to have the conversation, that it is still front and center and people are talking about it. So I'm optimistic that we're going to make some progress, but until there's some fundamental structural changes around FICO scores and that we have alternative credit scores, till there's fundamental structural changes around racism and how we don't have access to quality housing, which is oftentimes the backbone of assets that underwrite the starting of a business. And probably the most important, until people change their minds about our potential, we're not going to get as far as we really can. And so I think making it positive in the end, I think we'll still have the conversation. And the best thing that could possibly happen is that we have at least 100, if not more, new case studies of success that not just amplifies the power of Black female entrepreneurs, but provides some undergirding of what it takes to now replicate that and make it scalable so that maybe not 1 year, but 10 years from now, the script is completely flipped and we have many hundreds of $100 million businesses. We have several billion-dollar businesses run by Black women, but most importantly, there's not a single Black woman in 10 years or less that feels like they can't do it because they have some precedent before them and they've got a great amount of support behind them.
Melissa Bradley, co-founder of 1863 Ventures, thank you so much for your time and for joining us.
Thank you.
We're going through transitions constantly. And so I want you to think about other transitions you've experienced in your life and think about how you can apply whatever resiliency you got from that to your role as a business owner.
Before the pandemic, there were an estimated 6.4 million businesses owned by female entrepreneurs of color. They employed nearly 2.4 million people and generated over $422 billion in revenue. Our next guest has had a unique vantage point to watch the journeys of many Black female entrepreneurs. The legendary Daymond John, founder and CEO of FUBU, the Shark Group, and our favorite Shark Tank investor. Shark Tank has climbed into the hearts and dreams of many female founders of color, literally investing in their passions. I also recently had the honor of hosting his first ever Black Entrepreneurs Day, where Daymond gave away $250,000 to up-and-coming Black entrepreneurs. He's also a New York Times best-selling author. So right now, Stacey and I are very proud to welcome Daymond John.
Daymond, we're so happy to have you. And you have said that desperation leads to innovation. Now, we're in a time when many Black female entrepreneurs are feeling financial desperation due to the COVID-19 impact and other economic pressures caused by racist policies and practices. But are you seeing a peak in innovation from Black women founders? And do you think the challenge of the moment actually makes them a good bet?
I think that Black women founders are uniquely positioned for this challenge because the cards have never been in their favor, and it's been overwhelmingly challenging for them. However, I think that out of desperation does come creativity, and I think that technology is adding a certain aspect of it that's working out in their favors, because the best part about Black women is because of the challenge they've been through, they feel like nobody else is going to go and lend them a hand and save them, and it's really up to them.
Now, Daymond, you've talked about and you've written about one of my books that I think is an amazing book. I always talk about this book, The Power of Being Broke, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a Black woman, though, I want to ask you this, right? Who's the head of a household and the head of a business and the primary caretaker for the family. And how does that philosophy apply? And I also want to ask you, especially right now during this pandemic, a lot of people have had to pivot and figure out other streams of income and things to do. So I just want to hear about some of the success stories that you've seen and heard of, and also just talk about when you're a Black woman and you have all these different things going on in your life, how can the power of broke really work in your benefit?
Well, I can only share with you what I've experienced with my mother. I think all Black women they understand the power of broke. I think that, first of all, you have to have a mental standpoint to say, to not say, I can't do this, because you're doing it every day. I think bringing a life into this world and having to take care of a life, and there's no blueprint on on what you're supposed to do for this child, that is 10 times harder than running a business. And what I witnessed my mother do is she activated the power of broke. We would go to the white areas to go food shopping. Why? Because we got a better quality of meat for less of the price. She would send me away to different cities every single summer, and you would go, how can you go to different cities every summer? So she can educate me and take me off the crack-infested streets of Hollis so I could be with people, and you would think that she had a lot of money. No. She would just have a friend who lives in the Navy, a female who lived in Hawaii in the Navy. She would send me over to her house, and she would watch her son. No matter what, she activated the power of broke. And I think that African American and Black females understand this method, but you always have to do, first of all, your homework. How can you get more for less? What are strategic partnerships that you can use? OPM doesn't need to necessarily be other people's money. I always say it could be other people's marketing, mind power, manpower. If African Americans take up 10% of the population, but we take up 30% of the conversation on social media, well, then you got other people's marketing, right? You have other people's manpower. So they have to educate themselves like anybody. And I'm not saying when I say this that African American females are not educated, because actually they are more educated than most people, in our demographic, because they are the ones that go to school. They are the ones that finish college overwhelmingly more than the males. But what I'm saying is you have to educate yourself in business just as well.
Daymond, you make so many interesting points. Black women are indeed the most educated, but that's still not turning into revenue, still not turning into dollars. Now, with all of this money being invested in Black female entrepreneurs, Do you think the investment community has to understand that Black women do things differently, and that can actually be a plus?
And I do think they have to understand that you do things differently, you communicate differently, you respond differently. I think that, and if they don't understand it, well, then how can you prove yourself at a small scale and then find somebody who says that I want to replicate this? You know, when Black and white get together, they make green. When Black and Black get together, they make green. When you collaborate with other people, you know, that's what I did. I didn't make FUBU a global brand at first. What did I do? I talked to a very unique, group of people. I talked to African-American males between the ages of 18 to 30 that loved a music called hip hop and loved a certain type of clothes. They didn't necessarily like the kente cloth type of feel. They didn't like the backpack rapper type of feel. They wanted a very, very specific brand. And what I did was I did the best that I can do for them in Queens. Then I did the best I can do for them in Queens and Manhattan. And after that, people started to acquire the brand and go to Detroit and say, I'm the FUBU guy in Detroit. I didn't start off trying to market to females because I didn't know how to design for females. I didn't try to start a market for backpack rappers or skateboarders. I did the best that I could do for a very small community. But I have what you see us call on Shark Tank all the time, proof of concept. And that is how I was able to bring it to Samsung's textile division, a $200 billion company, to say that if we can replicate this in every single city, in every single country, we can do it all around the world.
You know, Daymond, you talk about how you started FUBU, and we've also heard a lot in this series about Black female entrepreneurs who are suffering from low self-esteem or even imposter syndrome. So does that affect, you think, their ability to succeed? And what is the cure for imposter syndrome? Have you ever felt that yourself?
Absolutely. I felt imposter syndrome. It wasn't earlier on my career. It was, more when I got a little further in my career, and I felt like that people didn't respect me as a person who understood business. They thought that because I made baggy jeans for the music entertainers and the kids who loved a certain culture of music, that I was going to walk into the boardroom with gold teeth, baggy pants, and start breakdancing. And I got over that by understanding that I didn't have to value those people. I valued other people who valued what I was doing. And that's how I got past imposter syndrome. But I kept educating myself, saying to myself, how am I not going to be somebody who got one bite at the apple or a one-trick pony? Right now, I'm taking, and I love to show you my flaws. I'm taking a 20-hour digital marketing course. Now, I've only up to 3 hours in it, and I'm acting like I know it all because I'm into 3 hours. But why am I taking a 28-hour digital marketing course? Because I know where the world is going, and I was already only investing in people that had some digital component. But now my investments, I'll be able to know what an acquisition cost of your customer is. I'll be able to know what performances are just as well as the great people I have running it. And I have a lot of people running it. And you know what I'm going to do after this? I'm going to take a Facebook course. I'm going to take an Amazon course. I'm going to take a pay-per-click course because I'm going to keep educating myself, and it's going to lead me to more and better investments. And that's where the imposter syndrome goes out of the room, because once you have a certain level of education, you're also not afraid to ask. You're not afraid to ask for what you don't know because you have a good base that you're coming from.
With that in mind, education is critical, and we're just learning so much from every word that you say. Thank you so much. But there is that self-esteem issue for a lot of Black women. And I'm wondering if you see differences in how they pitch themselves and how they ask for money versus other demographics, Black men included. And what are some of the pitfalls that they're more likely to fall prey to when it comes to asking for money?
No, I don't see any difference. I see the people who are successful who ask for money are people who have a board usually around them. They have proof of concept. They know their numbers night and day. They also share with you where they have failed, and they tell you about the story about how this train is leaving the station. One way or another, they would love you on it, but if you're not on it, this train is leaving the station. And that's what investors want to hear. The failures in people trying to get investments, I'll tell you what the failures are. They guess about the market. They have no proof of concept. They have no board and or advisors. They have no mentors. They are not set up structurally to take in capital. They have a DBA instead of a trademark, or they have a patent instead of a DBA, a LLC instead of something else. Their books and their accounting is all in shoe boxes, and I have no idea how much money they owe the IRS. So even two similar people, can have the similar product. I may like this person more, but I cannot give them the capital because they're not structured to take in the capital. And those are the things that I see are the downsides to it. So they have to walk in the room and be as prepared, and unfortunately sometimes more prepared than the counterparts, but the homework has to be there, and the presentation has to be, as I said, put forward with a bow tie on it, with a bow on it, excuse me.
You know, Daymond, you also told Inc. magazine that you invest in people and that there's two types, right? There's those who have digital literacy and those who don't. So Black female entrepreneurs are sometimes more reluctant to embrace technology, and it's clearly a challenge, especially now. And you just spoke on it too, because you're taking these courses online. So with so much business being conducted online right now, how do they and groups who truly want to invest in them handle that challenge?
They better have digital literacy. You can't walk in the room and say that you don't have that component. You have to start educating yourself. That's simple. I don't care what business it is. You know, this COVID thing has really sped up where we are with technology. It has moved it up 5 years, and it has highlighted everybody's strengths or weaknesses. And the numbers are simple. And so people who not understanding technology at all, they're just not going to win. The digital divide is separating so many people. So if you work at a store, if you know how to work the cash register, that's fine. But if you don't know QuickBooks, then you can never grow in that department, most likely. So we're talking about it even on the scales of just being an employee. So if you want to be a founder, you have to know it.
Daymond, do you think 2021 is going to actually be a turning point for Black female entrepreneurs?
I absolutely think so, because of some of the things I stated in the past on this interview, like all the initiatives that are going out there, all the people aware of systemic racism, and all the people who are going to look at Black females and say, you know what? During this time, you stood your ground. And I'm just always an optimistic person. I just think this is an opportune time. People's ears are perked up. The market is doing really well, and people want to park their money in various different places. So this is a great time. And instead of traveling 2 to 3 months, going and meeting all these potential venture or angel investors, you can meet them all in Skype or on Zoom in 3 days. So that can speed up your time to either hack your business and see what's working or what's not working, so you can come back even better.
Daymond John, founder, CEO of FUBU, legend in the entrepreneurial space, and also founder of the Shark Group. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your time.
It is a pleasure and honor. I'm back anytime you want.
If you have highly ambitious goals, then you put yourself under a lot of stress to achieve at a level that may not be realistic, at least at the moment. So if you adjust and focus on next 6 months and what's realistic and achievable within that time zone, you can dial it back a little bit. And so much of whether you succeed or don't is luck and opportunity, that part is beyond your control.
Thanks to all of our guests today, and thanks to Shea Moisture, our partner in this special series.
And thanks to all of you for watching. We hope you'll join us again next Wednesday for our next Shakeonomics episode. We'll be talking about how to pivot and adapt your business in challenging times.
Early on, I learned that it wasn't about me. It was about my customers. So I was able to reset, reimagine, and innovate because I have been studying them. I talk to them annually. I talk to them and I ask them, what are your goals this year? What are your strategies this year? What are some of your biggest challenges? So we must talk to our customers to find out what they want, because you can't sell if you don't know what people are buying.
You'll find all of these shows on the Shea Moisture YouTube channel, so don't forget to subscribe and you don't miss a thing.